So there's this guy who can only move his face, and he made $10 million in order to survive because he had millions of dollars in medical bills. On top of that, the government didn't allow him to make more than $800 a month because if he did, he would lose all the medical care they provided. So he figured out a genius plan, networked with big entrepreneurs, rose to the top of his industry, and overcame a level of adversity where most people would have accepted death. Again and again and again. His name is John Morrow, and a disclaimer, his story is not for the faint of heart. But if you're going through dark times, he might be a light at the end of the tunnel. Thanks to Shopify for sponsoring this video. Being born with this condition called spinal muscular atrophy, the fear that drove him was having to go to a nursing home.
Nursing homes are death sentences for people like me. They always die, usually within 6 months. A lot of people will get like bed sores because they literally don't get out of bed and your body will start to literally decay while you're still alive. At a bare minimum, my bills were $150 to $200K per year. The only insurance I qualified for was Medicaid, which took over paying all of these bills. They actually had limits on how much money I could make. The limit at the time was $800 per month. I graduated from college. I had 11 job offers, and I literally couldn't accept them. Because if I did, I'd lose all of the benefits keeping me alive.
So either he lives on Medicaid, but he lives below the poverty line at $800 a month forever, or he makes at least $300,000 a year to pay all bills himself, but he's free.
And there's literally nothing in between. If you take an entrepreneur and you tell them they can't work, it's literally taking away their reason to live. For a while, I really couldn't figure out a way out. I was even willing to consider solutions that would result in my death. How does someone jump from nothing, almost, to $300K a year?
And can $300,000 actually be enough to cover your medical bills? What if an accident happens? It could be in the millions.
In 2006, I was getting my license to become a real estate agent. I was coming home from class. There was a guy who was running late to work at Wendy's, and he plowed into my minivan going 85 miles an hour. He hit with such force that it literally ripped the whole front end of my van off. All I remember is waking up underneath my wheelchair, not being able to see, thinking I'm blind, and smelling smoke because the whole van was basically going to be covered in fire.
You actually able to feel your entire body?
I could feel everything, yeah. I just can't move. Both of my legs were crushed. The doctor said, imagine a sock filled with marbles. The marbles are your bones. It didn't even look like a leg anymore. Got brought to the hospital. Because of my risk of stopping breathing or getting pneumonia, they wouldn't actually give me anesthesia. So I had to go through setting all of those bones awake. That's the closest to torture that I've ever experienced. I begged them to stop, but I just had to take it.
What were the medical bills now, and was there still a chance to escape poverty?
What kept you going then?
This sense of defiance. When you're at the bottom and you feel like someone is holding you down, one of the most powerful emotions you can have is this feeling of "F you." Like, you're not going to keep me here.
At this point, most people would have given up, but he decided to be unstoppable. But what makes the difference between most people and him? Well, it's because this first big lesson that I learned from John.
You faced more pain and adversity as a child than most people would in their entire life.
As a young child, he had pneumonia multiple times, which is a near-death sentence for somebody like him, because your lungs fill up and you're literally drowning in your own mucus, and he didn't have the strength to cough it out.
My mother would push and basically do the Heimlich maneuver over and over and over again for days, like literally nonstop. Every time I'd go through this, my ribs would break. So it was immensely painful, but it was the only way to keep me alive.
How many times have you had it?
I had it 16 times. And there were cases where even like doctors and nurses were like, stop, just like let him die. But she didn't, and I'm grateful.
What is your experience now looking back at all of this? You've been through so much.
Yeah, he's been special from the beginning, but what mother isn't going to say that?
Yes, you're a little bit biased.
one particular time when he wanted to give up, his mother did something that changed his life forever.
She brought me a quote from Winston Churchill: never, never, never give up. That didn't just become part of my life. It became my normal. I can introduce you to Winston, my dog. Can you guess who he's named after?
And that explains how he became unstoppable. Pain is power. It makes you stronger. And after everything he's been through as a child, what could possibly faze him now?
I just learned, so this is gonna suck, but I've got to deal with it. So, okay, here we are. This is what we're doing.
So he survived the surgery with an additional hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical bills and started a long, painful rehab process.
So I literally just sat there for 6 months and plotted my escape.
And what helped you through these challenges was Shopify, right?
Yeah.
We'll keep that. It was Shopify that came in as the hero of this story.
Jokes aside, at this point, John had to figure out how to start a business from scratch. And it just so happens that our partner Shopify helps you do exactly that. They make it super easy to sell your own products online, no matter what stage you're at. And they support ambitious rebels like John, or you and me, us, the defiant ones, the ones who go against the odds. Now, John didn't start an e-commerce business like me. He had a different idea, a genius plan he might have never come up with if he hadn't been stuck in rehab. But I wanted to mention Shopify here because I'm so proud to have them as a partner now. I've loved them from day one when I was building my e-commerce business, and now they're supporting our channel because they believe in our mission of building a community of ambitious misfits, which now allows us to expand our team, we're hiring, and pursue even bigger projects that we have coming up. Check out shopify.com/Leon Hendricks for a 14-day free trial, so show them some love. But John's idea came to him when he was journaling to cope with all this trauma, because he's always loved writing, and now with all this time on his hands,
Started writing about personal finance initially. Anything I say here appears on the screen. It's about the quality of the microphone. It was a unique perspective, living on less than $800 a month. The mouse is pretty simple. If I push it left, it's left click. If I push it right, it's right click. Bitcoin is down today. Maybe so.
Go all in.
Be doing that later. So the articles just took off like wildfire. People say, oh, I started the blog and I waited 2 years to become successful. It was like 2 hours for me.
which brings us to the second big lesson that John shared with me. See, he didn't just magically know how to write well. It was because he was in a wheelchair his entire life.
While the kids were playing outside, the thing that you could do was read.
I could read, I could think. I've literally read tens of thousands of books. Started writing for other sites. My clients, on average, would get at least 50,000 visitors within 30 days. In some cases, millions upon millions of visitors. My career as a writer went from nothing to one of the best in the world within about 2 years.
Over the years, being in a wheelchair all his life became an advantage, which made him a damn good writer. And John calls it the counterpunch.
In boxing, when an opponent throws a punch, the bigger and more powerful the punch they throw, the bigger the opportunity for a counterpunch because they leave themselves unprotected. And this was an example of a counterpunch. Whenever bad things happened to me, I noticed that there was an equal opportunity always to find something good that would happen. I just had to find it.
If he wasn't in a car crash and going through rehab, he might have never made the time to start writing.
I mean, there are all of those advantages that I learned how to see and I learned how to use. I couldn't accept payment in the form of money. I began to think, what if I were able to get paid in some other currency than money? My writing eventually became, how can I generate millions and millions of dollars of value and then cash in?
All of it.
All of it. So I started making deals. I would say, I'll write this, but I notice one of your friends has 20 million Twitter followers. I want a personal introduction and phone call with that person. That is the price. In the beginning, it wasn't the top people. It was smaller. Then later, it was really big people like Tim Ferriss.
That makes so much sense. Hey, what are other values other than money? It's relationships, skills you can learn.
And so the counterpunch to being trapped and not being able to earn more than $800 is that I saw the opportunity of other types of value. And those types of value were worth millions and millions of dollars. Then I made one deal with one site with the owner of Copyblogger, Brian Clark, which was the biggest marketing site in the world at the time. It was, one day I'll ask you for a favor, a really big favor, and you can't say no.
Now, this was a leap of faith because there was no contract or anything, but it was a chance to escape Medicaid, so he continued working for free.
I think it was almost 4 years. I managed several hundred writers, and they couldn't pay me anything. But I did a huge amount of work. And Brian made literally millions of dollars off of the work that I did. And I learned how to run a site that gets a lot of traffic. The other thing that I figured out was it was only $300,000 a year because I was in the United States. I could actually lower that number just by moving. I could drive to Mexico, live in a condo on the ocean, and get all of my nurses for like 60 to 80 per year.
Wow, it's a good discount.
So 3 things happened at once. I basically got positioned to cash in. My mother got laid off from her job, and my caregiver retired. I said, now's the time.
This was not a safe choice. So much could go wrong.
There were a lot of drug wars, getting kidnapped. What if I got down there and failed and ran out of money? There were stories. People crossed the border. A Mexican police officer says, yeah, you know, everything in your car here, I want it. And there's literally nothing you can do. I had no safety net. Like, there was no backup plan.
What was that like crossing the border?
I was sweating, I was shaking. I remember worrying that they were going to see me and think I was on drugs. That's how afraid I was. I thought the odds were that I would die in Mexico.
It's easy to look at someone like him and think, wow, how is he so fearless? But he explained to me that he was only able to do it because he was more afraid than others, which is the third lesson I learned from him.
I actually used to meditate on what it would be like to die in a nursing home, which seems like an absurd thing, but I wanted to make that fear so real in my mind that everything I was going through at the moment was less scary in comparison. I literally used fear to get myself over the fear.
You're more afraid. What happens when you don't do it?
Yeah. People ask, how did you know you would succeed? I didn't. But it didn't matter. It was like, well, at least I died giving it a shot. When we pulled across the border, there were no border guards. We just drove into the country. And it was literally the next day that I called Brian. I thought long and hard about the favor I was going to ask. And that was, for the first time ever, I'm going to start an agency. You're going to endorse me. Copyblogger, yeah, over 30 million readers a year to all of these people. And his response was instant. Done. The next day, I forget if it was 300 clients or 500 clients. The very first who came through was Neil Patel, now considered the top marketer in the world. I literally went from making $800 a month to $1,000 an hour. So I started my own site and scaled up my business.
What would you say, how much money have you made in total?
Money that's come to me personally, it's over 10 million for sure. If you look at the amount of money I helped Neil make, I helped Copyblogger make, over $100 million in value. And now my business is 17 employees, millions in annual revenue, and the idea of ending up in a nursing home is impossible.